to see you again.
Thank you.
So Jocelyn, I'm just confirming with you that we will have time for Q&A at the end. And
Yes.
I'm going to invite everyone to put their questions into the chat and or in the Q&A section of Zoom, and we will tabulate them all at the end, but don't be afraid to put them in whenever it's coming up to you.
Okay, wonderful.
Cool. All right.
All right, so hello everyone. How y'all doing? My name is Jocelyn. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm from LA. I'm in LA right now. And today I'm going to be talking to you about what is honestly my all-time favorite topic to discuss, which is about integrity, honesty, knowledge, courage, and intimacy. So this topic is really near and dear to my heart because let's just say that integrity has been a very hard lesson that I had to learn in my personal life. And it's also one of the biggest reasons why I became a sex coach and sex educator. So yeah, let's get in it. I'm super stoked to get down in this topic with y'all. And yeah, thank you all for being here. So a little review of what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to go through introductions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history, myself. I would love to know a little bit about you as well. Then we're going to go into what sexual empowerment is. I think that the term sexual empowerment could be confusing, arbitrary, kind of vague, right? Like, what does it mean to be a sexually empowered person? So I've really brought it down to two main concepts, which is knowledge and courage. So we're going to be breaking those two apart. And then talking about integrity. So how speaking truth is the only way to intimacy. I know that's a bold statement, but I'm very, very convinced through my life work, through my career, through working with couples that really the only way to develop intimacy is by being 100% truthful, honest, sitting in your authenticity and being an integral individual. And then we'll be at the end, the Q&A. So let's get in it. Okay, so we already got a little introduction, but a little bit more about me. So I became a sex coach and educator because I was raised in a very conservative Catholic household. I'm first generation Latina. My mom is from El Salvador. My dad's from Mexico. And I mean, I was real religious growing up. Like I went to Catholic school, kinder through 12th grade. I wanted to be a nun when I was 16. And I loved going to church, obviously. Like, I mean, when I was younger, I really enjoyed the community. But as I was getting older, something that I noticed was happening is that I was receiving a lot of sex negative messages, like, being in purity culture, being told that my sexuality belongs to a man, being told that masturbation is a sin, being told that pleasure is a bad thing, right? And it really took me to a really terrible depression when I was around 17 years old. And because at that time, I just felt like there was nothing that I could do to be perfect. And all I wanted to do was be perfect so that God could accept me, so that I could accept me, right? There was even a point in time in my life where I was going to confession once a week. If you're not Catholic and don't know what that is, it's when you go to a priest and tell them your sins so that you can be absolved. And the belief is that if you have a mortal sin on your record without having gone to confession, you can go to hell. And at the time, I had a boyfriend. And of course, when you're 16 years old, you're exploring your sexuality. And I was just convinced that I was going to go to hell. So I was going to confession once a week so that I wouldn't go to hell. And finally, a priest had to tell me, like, hey, you don't have to come once a week. You can come once a year and you'll be fine. But just to kind of show you how deep my sexual shame was at that time in my life. So this is why I'm so passionate about really supporting individuals through healing shame, through getting to a point where they feel really great about themselves, because that's the journey that I had to go on. Is really, leaving the Catholic Church, finding a spiritual faith that celebrates my sexual expression, that celebrates who I am as a sexual person. And what I'm going to teach you today is a really big part of my story, because what ended up happening was I left the Catholic Church, the pendulum swung from one end all the way to the other, right? I was like super conservative, just wanted, to be right in the eyes of God. And then I became incredibly reckless with my sexual behavior. I was lying, manipulating, pretty much using sex as a form of validation, right? Because no one taught me. No one taught me how to have healthy, intimate relationships. All I was taught was that sex and intimacy is bad and it's wrong. And as someone who was desperate for that intimacy, I would do anything to feel an ounce of closeness, right? So I was doing it the wrong way. So this is what I learned through my experience and what I'm excited to teach you today. So I'm curious to know, I know we already kind of did the intro with your names, you know, to repeat your names, but I'm curious to know what you are most excited about learning today. So what about the title and the description attracted you to coming? So if you can throw that in the chat, just want to get kind of like a feeler for what you're most excited about learning. Oh, great. We have folks that resonate with being raised. Yep, yep. Shame issues. Awesome. Thank you, Ana Cecilia. Integrity. Integrity. Awesome. Okay, so it seems like integrity has been a big one. And I think it's one, you know, I really, I wish that a lot more folks in the sexual space really talked more about integrity, because it is such a huge part of being in an intimate relationship. Polished Catholic and same story about confession, integrity, yes, integrity experience, point of view, shame, shame, shame. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you all for sharing. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to touch upon all this stuff. So I'm glad that what you're interested in is what we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to be getting into this obviously a lot deeper as we go on, but since integrity and shame seems to is the one that most people are talking about right now, the reason why this is such an important piece of my story, and you know, the reason why I say it's the only way to intimacy is because the thing about shame, and I think Gabor Mate said it best, is that we give up our authenticity for the sake of attachment, right? Sometimes when we're not taught that our truth is the most important thing that matters, when we're not taught that who we are authentically, right, is worthy of being loved and accepted, right? What ends up happening is that we start to mold ourselves into what we believe others want us to be, right? Or we start to hide and lie. And this is what shame does. When we feel ashamed of our sexualities or of ourselves in any way, what we tend to do is go into hiding and lying, right? Whenever someone lies, it's because shame is present. So when you're lying and you're hiding and you're not able to be fully authentic, right, then you're literally betraying yourself. You're literally pushing yourself to the side and you're not giving someone or yourself 100% who you are, right? You're giving others and yourself a version that is not really who you are. So how can you develop intimacy when you're not 100% in your integrity? But in order to be in your integrity, there needs to be a journey of healing shame, right? So yeah, we'll talk more about that. Okay, getting ahead of myself. Okay, so sexual empowerment. What does it mean to be a sexually empowered individual? So if you could throw in the chat box, just want to get your thoughts. What does it mean to you to be a sexually empowered person? Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Roxana. So when you think of the word sexual empowerment, what comes to mind? Knowing yourself, to decide fully about my sexuality, to own it, keeping the lights on. I love that. It means to be unapologetic for my wants and needs sexually. Yes. I'm free to ask for what I want, to feel deserving of pleasure and act accordingly. Your desires, your needs, your wants, confidence to express your truth. Yes, 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 yes. This is beautiful. Permission to experience and express myself sexually. Absolutely. Confidence to express your truth. Being honest with what you want and need. Yes. Amazing. Okay, great. Yeah, so pretty much everyone literally said exactly how I would define sexual empowerment, right? So there's two concepts, right? It's knowledge and courage, right? Because the word sexual empowerment can also feel very vague, right? And arbitrary. Like, what does it mean to feel good about my sexuality, right? Well, the two things that I came up with was as long as you have the knowledge, then all you really need is the courage, right? So what do I mean by that? So the knowledge that we have to obtain in order to become sexually empowered beings is the knowledge of sexual health, right? So understanding like basic sexual health, you know, I'll talk about that in a second. Knowledge of self and knowledge of your partner, right? So that's why this topic is called Knowing Me, Knowing You. It's about getting to know yourself and also learning how to get to know your partner to create that intimacy. So what does it mean to have knowledge of sexual health? Well, the first one is anatomy. Okay. So understanding like what your anatomical parts are. Where's your clitoris? Where's your vulva? Where's your vagina? Where's your frenulum? Where's your scrotum? Where's your prostate? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? Where are the nerve endings? How can you stimulate yourself in a way that feels really awesome, right? It's also about understanding risks and prevention, right? When it comes to engaging sexually. So what STIs are out there, how to prevent from STIs, how to have communication conversations, really uncomfortable conversations with the people you're going to have sex with about STI prevention, right? Also knowing that, what STIs are curable, which ones aren't, right? And just really navigating the sexual space with that knowledge, right? And the last one is holistic living. Okay. So I always joke around that sex coaching almost has nothing to do with sex. Like I reel people in with sex coaching and I'm like, just kidding. We're going to talk about everything else because guess what? Sex is not the problem. Sex is usually a symptom of something else that's going on in our lives, right? So when we understand that a really big part of our sexual expression is holistic living, right? It's not just like the penis goes inside a hole, right? Or the right. It's not just about the body parts. It's about understanding what's going on in your internal world. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? And most importantly, who are you, right? Understanding who you are so that you can show up as who you are and give who you are to yourself and to someone else, right? It's really interesting. I started working with men about 2 years ago. And, after doing so much research and working with, quite a few men now, it's fascinating how many of these like sexual concerns that men have around erections, like maintaining erections, having an erection, premature ejaculation, really has nothing, like most of the time, has nothing to do with like a physiological issue, right? One of the things I go through with my men is, do you drink enough water? Do you get exercise? Do you eat well, right? And they'll say, yes, 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 right? And then it comes down to not knowing how to express their feelings fully, right? Not understanding that there is a relationship, a direct relationship with our emotions and our sexual expression, right? If we're stressed out, our body's not going to do what it needs to do in order to be aroused, right? And be receptive to pleasure. So this concept of holistic living is a very important one when it comes to being a sexually empowered person. So what does it mean when we say knowledge of self and of partner, right? So once we take that knowledge of like what it means to be like, sexual health, understanding all those basic, broader, information, then it goes to, okay, knowledge of who we are. And this is where a lot of my clients and me, myself on my journey, and I'm sure many people here get stuck, right? Like oftentimes I'll hear people say, okay, I know I'm supposed to communicate about sex. I just don't know what to say, right? That's something that comes, I just don't know what to say. Like I know I'm supposed to say something, but I don't know what, right? So knowledge of self, this is pretty much the meat and potatoes right here of your sexual exploration journey. Understanding your body, right? What is it like? Where are the body parts on your body? What it feels good, what doesn't feel good, right? Like becoming an expert of your own body. The next one is your sexual desires and your preferences, okay? And this is where a lot of people get stuck. What turns you the fuck on, right? How do you like to be touched and where? And being specific, right? And in a bit, I'm going to have everyone do like a little activity to kind of tap into that, right? But oftentimes, it's so funny too when I have clients, I work with them and I'll ask them like, well, what do you like? And they're like, I don't know. Right. But if we're just prompted a little bit, I always say, I don't believe that. You know something, right? And I'll start asking them questions like, do feet turn you on? Yes or no? And they'll very clear right away say, oh, no, or yeah, right? Do you enjoy, clitoral stimulation? Yes or no? Oh, yeah, right? So it's like, okay, you know more than you think you do, right? And oftentimes we just need like a platform and some type of prompting so that we can get to those answers, right? So anyways, understanding what your sexual preferences are, what you like and what you don't like. And lastly, your sexual boundaries, right? It's important to know what you like, but it's also important to know what you don't like, where you don't like to be touched, what doesn't feel good for you. And also accepting that your boundaries are going to change from day to day, from week to week, from month to month, from year to year, right? Like you might be going through like a vanilla phase in your life, and the next year going through like a major kink phase, right? And then you're going through like whatever, like we all go through these things, and like boundaries change and shift, right? So this is why keeping that communication with your partner and checking in with yourself constantly is so important, and understanding that your sexuality shifts just like you do as a person. And just because you like something different today than you liked it yesterday doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, right? It's just knowing that you have to constantly check in with yourself. So, when I was 23 years old, I was working at a sex shop called A Touch of Romance in North Hollywood, California. And this woman came in. She was a Spanish speaking woman who couldn't have been younger than like 55. I mean, she was, older, maybe mid 50s, maybe like early 60s. And I was 23. And she came in because she had just started dating this man and she wanted to keep up with him, right? So I said, because he had a high stamina, and she's like, I'm trying to keep up with him. I'm postmenopausal. I need some support. So I was like, okay, do you want to check out, the toys? And she goes, no, do you have like some type of lubricant? And I'm like, oh, I know what'll support you. Let's look at the clitoral creams, right? So I started explaining to her what the clitoral creams are, and she's looking at me like she just like I'm like if I'm speaking a completely different language to her. And I looked at her and I said, is everything okay? Do you have any questions? And she goes, well, what's that word you keep saying? Now I'm confused, right? Because I'm like, I don't know what word I'm saying that would be something that she wouldn't know. So I was confused and I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, what's that word you keep saying? And I said, clitoris. And she says, yes, what is that? And I looked at her and I said, you've never heard of a clitoris? And she said, no. I said, okay. So I took out my vulva puppet and I started explaining, right, to a woman that was twice my age, more than twice my age, what a clitoris was. And it was in this moment that I realized there is a really big issue, right? Particularly with vulva owners, where vulva owners don't have a full grasp and understanding of what our anatomy is, right? On average, a penis owner will engage and look at their penis 3 to 5 times a day, right? Whereas vulva owners, we go through our entire lives sometimes without ever having looked at our vulvas. Or if we look at our vulvas, it'll be because is everything okay? I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Like I just want to make sure everything's fine, right? It's never like we don't use those as an opportunity to get to know ourselves. So one of the things that I do with my clients to support them with self-knowledge is what I call Yoni Gazing Ceremonies, right? And I just started doing lingam gazing ceremonies as well. Lingam meaning penis, yoni meaning vulva. And this is really a really beautiful practice. If you are getting into sex coaching, I highly recommend to make this a part of the journey that you do with your clients, at least having one session where you go through anatomy and actually have them look at themselves, because it is a life-changing experience for so many, right? And that only deepens your connection and knowledge of self, right? So understanding what you are, understanding what you're looking at, right? When you look at your body, and also can support you on practical things. If you're communicating with your partner, like, hey, I really like my clitoris to be touched this way, instead of kind of guessing where it is, you can be like, I know exactly where my clitoris is. Let me show you. This is what I like, right? So it can only improve your connection to self and, of course, your sexual fulfillment. Okay, so one of the things that we do with the Yoni Gazing ceremonies is orgasmic breathing, which is another way that we can attune to our bodies. Okay, so I'm sure. Oh, I don't know if you've. Okay, let me just show you what it is. So, orgasmic breathing is when we engage our PC muscles, right, our Kegels, with our breathing. Okay, so it's when we squeeze, right, we contract and we push. So usually how it's done is it will breathe in by squeezing and then we breathe out by pushing. And what this does is it helps us attune to our bodies, right? And really connect so that we can continue to learn that mind, body, physical connection. It also really supports with pleasure, right? So if you guys want to practice it right now, we could do a few orgasmic breathing. So first I want to invite everyone to just kind of squeeze your PC muscles, squeeze your Kegel muscles. There you go. And once you locate them, what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in and you're going to squeeze on the inhale. You'll hold at the top and then you'll push that muscle out on the exhale. So let's do it again. You're going to breathe in, squeezing on that inhale, breathe in, pause, and then push out on that exhale. And this is, again, another really wonderful tool to connect ourselves, to grow that knowledge of ourselves, and to really feel and drop into our bodies. Now, another practice that can be really supportive on understanding like what it is that we want and who we are is this workbook that I created called Knowing Me, Knowing You. I was listening to ABBA when I was making it, and I was like, this is actually a perfect title for this, which is why I chose it. Anyways, so yeah, this is a really great workbook that I've developed that has supported a lot of individuals too. And I can actually send it also to Amanda and Jordan to distribute to everyone who would like it, and you're more than welcome to use it. It's been a beautiful tool because it takes you on a journey of really developing the language to know what it is that you like and don't like during sex. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about what it looks like. So it starts with the beginning of a sexual experience and then takes you through a full journey of a sexual experience. So we start with like the time of day and setting. It goes into a little bit of initiating intimacy and foreplay, um, being playful in kinks, right? Fantasies in media, toys, and aftercare. So I'm going to go ahead and just give everyone a little opportunity to maybe even answer some of these questions for yourself, just to kind of be refreshed on maybe a couple of things that you enjoy. So I'll put like maybe 2 minutes if you guys want to do this one. This one seems to be one that a lot of my clients tend to struggle with, right? Is initiating intimacy, knowing how to get into a sexual energy with a partner, especially since there's like fears of like rejection, fears of judgment, right? And then foreplay, really understanding what it is that warms you up and turns you on. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to kind of answer these and maybe learn a little something about yourself as well. All right, I'll give everyone one more minute. Okay. So you don't have to share what it is that you wrote, but I'm curious to know, just taking a moment to pause and kind of reflect on these things, right? How does that, like, what was that experience like for you to be able to just kind of stop and answer these questions? Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Jonathan. Yeah, seeing, smelling, touching, and tasting all the genitalia. Beautiful. So what did it feel like to pause and answer these questions and reflect on your preferences when it comes to this? Refreshing. Awesome. Pausing to answer these questions feels like self-care. Yes. It let me jog my memory and remember what things I used to like and no longer like. Needed. Hmm. And assess what you don't like. Stuff we may not think about or prompted. Assess the things you don't like. So, if you're my husband and I went through a lot of these kinds of questions last year and totally changed how we communicate, engage each other. Yes, amazing, Nicole. Thank you for sharing that. I need different things depending on what day it is. Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you all for sharing. So yeah, refreshing, right? To just kind of taking a moment to be able to like really understand like these little bits about yourself, to really kind of like refresh your memory on what it is that you enjoy and coming back to you, right? Obviously, like knowledge, again, the reason why I put these two categories with like understanding sexual health and then understanding yourself is because you can read all the books in the world about sexuality, but at the end of the day, the one that has all of the answers about how you can have a fulfilling sex life is you, right? So beautiful. It felt really good and made me want to answer more, writing things out. Amazing. Well, I'm going to be sending the workbook, Sarah, so all of you will have access to it as well. It's foreplay. I was working towards redefining sexes. Don't expect to. Love it. Yeah, thank you, Roxana. That's awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so now let's talk about this. So I felt when I was, doing this presentation that we could not talk about integrity, that we could not talk about courage without talking about everything else that we just spoke about, right? Because the question comes back to, okay, I know I'm supposed to talk about my preferences. I know I'm supposed to be open and honest in communication, right? But I don't know what to say and I don't know how to say it, right? So, this is really probably, I joke around too that I say like I should probably change my name to communication coach, right? Because as a sex coach, the bulk of what we do is support individuals in learning how to communicate more effectively, right? And healthy communication is speaking truth, and vulnerability is the only way to develop true intimacy, right? Now, the first step to really understanding how to speak your truth is by understanding what your truth is, right? Which is why the knowing me, knowing you is so important, which is why going through the sexual exploration journey for yourself is so important. By reconnecting with yourself, understanding what you like, what you don't like, what your boundaries are, what your preferences are, all of that are so important because oftentimes individuals, especially if they're feeling unfulfilled in their sex life, will take a very passive role in their sexual experiences, right? So what do I mean by a passive role? I mean that we'll pretty much just take whatever is given to us, right? And this also is a result of past sexual experiences, unfortunate sexual experiences. It's also a result of trauma, right? So when individuals have traumatic experiences, either in childhood or adolescence, the characteristic of fawning, right, becomes something that sometimes people kind of like lean towards, right? So we have flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. And fawning, another word for fawning is people pleasing, right? We tend to forget about ourselves and our pleasure, and we keep our focus on our partner's pleasure because we've been told, right, that we need to make our partner feel good. What I always say is that's not true. Your pleasure is your responsibility. Your partner's pleasure is their responsibility. And then when you come together, right, in a sexual experience, you are co-creating a pleasurable experience by owning what it is that you enjoy and sharing that with the person that you're with, right? But you can't do that if you don't know. So let's say you've gone through the sexual exploration journey, you know it feels good, you have all the knowledge that you need, you have all the knowledge that you need in order to be able to fully express yourself. And now all you need is that courage to stand in your integrity, right? So, why is it so challenging to be honest with ourselves and our sexual partners? Why is that such a hard thing for us to do? So, if you can throw it in a chat, why do you think it's so hard to be in integrity when we're engaging in romantic and sexual relationships? Fear of rejection? because we're scared of the reaction, shame. Absolutely. Fear of judgment. I think many think that they're outside of the norm. Yes. Oh my goodness. That's a huge one. Um, I, when I was receiving, like, I was getting flooded with DMs at one point in the beginning of my career. And it was so interesting to see like 50 messages, all with people saying, this may be a weird question. I might be the only one experiencing this, right? And they're all saying the same exact things. And I'm like, if only they knew that they're not clearly not the only ones, right? But yeah, need for validation, attachment system wired into survival. Yes. Lack of self-acceptance, fear of not being accepted for our desires, people pleasing makes other people's desires. Yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah, this is some hard shit. You know what I mean? Like, I would probably say this is the most challenging thing, right? When it comes to developing intimacy with ourselves and with others, is learning how to stand in our integrity and being honest about our desires, our thoughts, and our feelings, knowing that what we may say may hurt the people that we're with. Right? I always say, like, sitting in that discomfort of someone else's disappointment. Oh, that is hard, right? It's just being like, I know you're disappointed that I'm expressing my truth, and we just have to sit in that and learn how to be able to work through that together, right? Speaking your truth so that the person with you can speak theirs as well, right? So let's talk a little more about this. So integrity. So how do we develop integrity in a romantic and sexual relationship? So the first one is understanding the energetic implications. So I don't know if any of you have ever read the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. It's a phenomenal book, highly recommend it. And I love that book because he talks about how he talks about integrity from a physics standpoint. Okay. So when we say integrity in the world, right, a lot of us will say things like honesty, transparency, authenticity, right? We usually describe it from a very moral standpoint, right? But Gay Hendricks in his book talks about integrity from a physics standpoint. And in physics, when something is in integrity, it is whole and it's complete. And energy can only move through objects that are whole and complete. The moment it is out of integrity, energy can no longer move through those objects, right? So a perfect example would be like, if I'm asking someone like, hey, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm fine, right? And it's like, okay, clearly you're not fine because your energy, your body, language, and your words are not in alignment, right? But if I say, hey, how are you doing? And they say, I'm actually having a pretty crappy day. I'm not doing very well, right? Okay, now there's some truth. Now there's energy flow between us. Oh, do you want to talk about it? Yeah, actually, I would like to talk about it. Okay, what's going on? Well, this, and this, and that, right? Now there's an energy flow. Now there's not this thing that's stifling between us because we're both standing in our integrity, and now we can create connection. When you are out of integrity, whether or not the person you're speaking with knows that you're lying, it's like putting a pebble in a hose. You stifle energy flow between you and whatever individual you're speaking with, right? So keeping that energy alive, right? Keeping it flowing and keeping it open is really the goal here when we are developing intimacy with ourselves and with others, right? Because when we lie, there's always going to be those feelings of like shame and guilt that are just going to be exacerbated. Remember, shame thrives in secrecy, right? So the more that we are upfront about the things that we are ashamed of, the more that we admit to ourselves, hey, I'm really ashamed about this thing. I'm really guilty about this thing. I feel like shit about this thing, the less we'll actually feel those feelings of guilt and shame. Okay. The next one is attunement to self. So being clear on what your inner world is, right? Again, how are you going to speak truth if you don't know what your truth is, right? And so many of us feel so disconnected because we're not taking those moments to really stop and think, how am I feeling right now in this moment? What feels good for me right now? What doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't always have to be related to sexuality, but just understanding on the day-to-day basis what is going through you, right? Understanding I'm feeling a little sad right now because of this, and that. I'm feeling really grateful because of this, and that, right? Understanding your inner world on a deeper level can help you speak that truth because you'll know exactly what it is to speak. It also helps you derive more compassion for yourself and compassion for others, right? So if you know you're having a shitty day because something happened, and then someone else around you is having a shitty day because something happened, you can look at them and be like, I get it. I've been there. I've had shitty days as well. I totally get where you're coming from. Like, it's all good. Let's talk about it, right? What can I do to support you? So really supports in developing compassion and also empathy, right, for the people that you're engaging with. And the last one is being selfish is selfless, right? So what do I mean by that? It means that when you put yourself first, you are actually able to show up as your best self for others, right? So in my past, a really terrible pattern that I had, that I actually really got a lot of help for. So something I didn't mention was I was also in recovery for sex and love addiction for 3 years in my life of my life, which is actually where I learned the power of integrity and where I learned how to develop a spiritual practice that celebrated my sexuality versus that condemn it, right? And a really big piece of what I learned through that experience is that when I'm putting myself first, because I always felt that what I needed to do was make everyone around me happy, right? I always felt like if I just tell you what you want to hear, if I just give you what you want, you'll be happy with me and then we'll both be happy, right? And then everything will be fine. But inside was turmoil, right? Because I was constantly betraying myself. I was constantly getting in the way of my own joy and happiness because I was lying to myself. They didn't know I was lying to them, but I knew that I was lying to them and I knew that I was lying to myself. So when you're selfish, when you're putting yourself first, when you're being open and honest about your truth, you're actually giving the person, the people that you're with, right? And yourself the best version of you, right? And that is what's most important when developing intimacy. So, what are some integral practices that we can develop so that we can stand in our integrity a little bit more? The first one is journaling. It is so basic, but honestly, journaling is the best. Like sitting down with paper and pen and just answering the simple question, how do I feel right now? Is such a game changer to understanding yourself, to deepening your relationship to yourself, understanding your inner world, constantly having that check in. So, developing some type of journaling practice is a really wonderful tool. If in some people need to be prompted, right, in order to be able to journal. So if like how am I feeling today doesn't feel like a great prompt, there's so many prompts online you can Google, like journaling prompts. There's also this brand called the Skin Deep. They have these like playing cards called the and they actually have a deck on the self, which is really great. So these are just some tools that you can develop to kind of understand your inner world a little bit more. Doing what's right, not what's easy. I always joke around with my clients. I'm like, if I'm not challenging you, if you're not even a little uncomfortable during our coaching, and I'm not doing my job, right? Why? Because growth comes from uncomfortable moments. Speaking truth is an uncomfortable experience. And I think that a lot of us lie to ourselves and say, oh, I want to be a person of integrity and it's going to be great and it's going to be wonderful and I'm going to feel amazing all the time. And I'm here to tell you, no, you're not. Like you're really not. It really does not feel great all the time to be honest and to be open about your truths. It's actually the opposite many times. It honestly, it feels like shit, right? So I guess your question is, okay, then why do I do it, right? Well, the next one, because it's like biting into a bitter fruit with a sweet aftertaste. So in one of my SLA meetings, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous meetings, I remember that there was this man who shared that self-betrayal feels like biting into a sweet fruit with a bitter aftertaste, right? Because you're saying something that's not true to appease another person, right? In this case, right, in the bedroom, like, sure, like, I'm okay with that. Yeah, that's fine. Sure, whatever you want, right? Kind of being like agreeable because we're afraid that if we're not agreeable, then we won't be loved or accepted, or like the other things folks said, that we'll be rejected or shamed, right? So we feel good about ourselves for like a hot second. It's like, all right, like I'm appeasing, this feels good, right? But then it always feels bitter because you know that you didn't stand in your truth, and there's always going to be inner chaos with that, right? And the thing about speaking truth and integrity is that it's like biting into a bitter fruit with a sweet aftertaste, because even though it doesn't feel great in the moment, to be honest, even if that means disappointing someone, at the end, you'll always feel good knowing, hey, at least I was able to speak my truth. At least I was able to say what was actually in my heart, right? Versus lying about it to make someone else happy. So, why is it important to speak the truth for intimacy development, right? Why is it important to be a person of integrity for intimacy? So the first one is it creates trust. Okay. Here's the thing. Even if we were to speak openly and honestly, and what we said were to hurt the other person's feelings, there's always an opportunity for some type of reconciliation when we're able to be open and honest about ourselves and what we want, right? Because even though it was hurtful, it was honest, right? Even though it was hurtful, it was truth. And that truth, again, can elicit, or we'd like to think in a healthy, secure relationship, will elicit compassion and empathy from your partners, right? So it really creates trust. When we lie, even if we're doing it to appease someone or to spare their feelings, to be able to mend that trust from a lie is much harder and in some cases even impossible to do so, right? So speaking that truth creates trust among individuals. Next one, it provides opportunity for healing and growth, right? Again, even though it might be sucky to hear the truth sometimes, at least it provides that opportunity to be like, okay, I hear you. I don't agree with you, or it hurts that you're telling me this, but I'm happy, right, that you're speaking that truth and we can grow and we can heal from here. Elicits empathy from the right partners, right? So a reason why I say partners is because we'd like to think in romantic and sexual relationships that the people that we speak truth to will give us that soft landing, right? They'll be able to say, "Hey, I see you, I hear you, I don't agree with you, I don't understand you, but I see you," right? That validation that we need so that we can feel understood, seen, heard by the individuals that we engage with. And puts your needs at the forefront. Okay, so this is important. When you're in a dynamic, right, with one or two or more people, right, just in a romantic sexual dynamic, even in casual sex, right, it doesn't always have to be like long-term relationships. When everyone is putting their needs at the forefront, everyone is being upfront, right? I always like to use like the analogy of like going to a restaurant. If a waiter comes and says, "Hey, what do you want to eat?" And I say, "I don't know. Can you figure it out for me?" Right? There's going to be confusion. There's going to be lack of clarity. You're probably not going to want to go back to that restaurant because you don't know what you want ever, right? And the waiter will probably super be like confused and maybe even stressed out about like, "Oh my God, I hope I bring that person something that they enjoy," right? But there's a 50-50 chance you're going to like what the waiter brings you. But if you go to a restaurant and you say, "Hey, this is what I would like. I would like this, and this with extra sauce and blah, 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 blah," right? And the waiter says, "Absolutely, I got you," brings your meal. Even if there's something wrong with your meal, you can flag the waiter back and say, "Hey, can you change this up? Like, I actually asked for this, not this. No problem." And then the waiter brings you what you desire and you get your needs met, right? Sex is the same exact way. When we put our needs at the forefront, we're upfront about like, "Hey, this is what I need. This is what I need from you." And the other person or people that you're engaging with can do the same, right? Then there's no confusion. There's no lack of clarity, right? It's very black and white. This is what they need. This is what they want. Okay, great. This is what I can provide you. This is what I need. This is what I want. Okay, great. This is what I can provide you, right? So that always will also help you regulate your nervous system. When you feel that security, there's no confusion and everyone feels good. Okay, so courage. Now, why is courage such a big part of developing integrity? So now that you got the knowledge, can you find the courage to express your partner's your needs and stand by your truths, your needs to your partner and stand by your truth, right? So this is the hard part. Again, it's uncomfortable. And I think that the more that we accept that it's uncomfortable, the easier it'll be for us, right? That was a hard truth. And in my journey, I had to understand, like, oh shit, speaking truth is not fun. This is hard, right? This is hard. And your clients are going to come to you and they're going to have a lot of hard truths that they're going to need to also kind of admit to themselves and to their partners. And I think the most comforting thing that you can tell someone and you can tell yourself is it's not easy and it's okay that it's not easy. You are supported on this journey, but the rewards, right, far outweigh the discomfort of it. So how do we develop that courage? One is communicate honestly. If you're not used to communicating honestly with others, that journaling practice will really help and support you to be just really real with yourself, right? So if I still have a hard time telling someone the truth, at least I can tell it to myself on a piece of paper, right? This is how I feel. This is what I'm unhappy with. This is what feels good. This is what doesn't feel good. This is what I desire, right? And just being very honest about that with yourself is a really great first step, right? But always communicating honestly, right? Even if that means that you might disappoint the other person. The next one is listening to uncomfortable truths, right? So we always talk about like, yeah, find yourself a partner who can like love and accept you and who's a soft landing, but it's also understanding that you have to be that soft landing as well, right? Learning how to listen to those uncomfortable truths, learning how to not take them personally, learning how to be able to also be real with your expression or like how you feel, right? Like, I'm going to be honest with you. Listening to that was really hurtful. That was uncomfortable for me, and I didn't want to hear it. But I appreciate you expressing your truth to me. And let's talk about this more. How can we come to a place of resolution? What can we do together as a team so that we feel good about this, right? So it's not just about communicating, honestly, it's also about listening to those things that you don't always want to hear, right? Which can equally be as challenging. And the last one is taking action, right? So I think many people, I'm sure, like kind of understand like communication isn't enough. What really matters is comprehension, right? So we can communicate our needs, express what we want, but if the other person isn't taking action, or if we're not taking action based on the things that our partner expresses to us, then comprehension has not been reached, right? And comprehension can only be reached when there is action that is being taken so that we know and understand like, hey, we're all on the same page. I get you, you get me, we understand each other, right? And we can move forward or not, right? Depending on what it is that is on the table. Okay, so how do we develop the courage in order to stand in our integrity? So the first one is, again, knowledge, knowing yourself and what to express. And the workbook that I'll be providing all of you could really support, like I said, you and your clients in getting to that point. The next one is practice, right? That's another cool thing about being a sex coach is that your clients get to practice with you, right? Like I remember, I mean, this happened several times, but one time in particular was so fun. This client, she like was having a really hard time expressing her needs, right? So I said, okay, let's practice. You know, we were role playing as if I was her partner. And she like was trembling, asking for oral sex, you know, and I said, okay, let's come up with a few ways that it feels authentic for you to say, I want you to go down on me, right? And she goes, okay, well, I really like saying it like, I want you to lick my pussy and I want you to go down on me. I was like, great. I was like, now I want you to say it 10 times. And she was mortified. She's like, what? I'm like, tell me 10 times that you want to do this. And so she said, I want you to go down on me. I want you to go down on me. I want you to go down on me like 10 times, right? And the first one, she was like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. And by the 10th time, I said, how do you feel? She's like, I still feel uncomfortable, but I feel a little more comfortable than I did from the first time I said it, right? A lot of these times we just need to practice what it feels like, right? We just need to know, what does it feel like to speak this truth? What does it feel like to say this thing that I've never said out loud before, right? And the beauty of having a coach or a therapist, right, is that you get to practice that with them. And if you don't have a coach or a therapist, if you have a confidant, a friend that you really trust, that's another really great opportunity to practice. Like, hey, can I practice these things with you? Can I tell you what I want, what I don't want, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, so that you can at least get the words out of your mouth and know what that feels like to express truth. And last one is self-love and worth. Okay. This is a big one. This is a huge one, actually. Oftentimes, when we are not in a place where we're ready to speak truth, is because we don't believe that we ourselves, as we are worthy of love and acceptance, right? We think that we need to pretend to be someone else in order to be loved and accepted. And so, a really big piece of going on this journey of learning how to stand more in your integrity so you can develop really deep intimacy is having the belief that you deserve a partner who is going to accept your truth, or at least accept you for speaking your truth, right? That is going to listen to you, that is going to empathize with you, right? And that you will do the same, not only with them, but also with yourself, right? I remember I recently got into a relationship, and it's funny because I keep telling my partner, oh my goodness, I was single for 3 years, right? And I keep telling my partner, I had this idea of who I would be getting into a relationship again, and it's not lining up with what my body is doing, right? Like my body will start to like freak out, right? And then I'd get angry and I'd be like, oh, like not trying to react this way. Like like psychologically, like I know that I shouldn't be upset, but like my body is like sending off alarms, right? And so I was talking to a friend about this, and she goes, it sounds like you're more angry and frustrated at yourself for feeling this instead of just accepting that those feelings are there. And that honestly blew my mind. I was like, damn, yeah, like oftentimes we get angry at ourselves for having needs. We get angry at ourselves for feeling jealous. We get angry at ourselves because we have a boundary that we are afraid to express because we don't want the other person to feel bad, right? But if we just accept those things about ourselves, like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. I have this boundary, I have this desire, and this is just where I'm at in this moment, right? It really can alleviate a lot of that emotional turmoil that we feel inside when we are showing up in ways that maybe are not congruent with who we think we are, right? In romantic and sexual spaces. Okay, so hold on, is this yeah, so ending with a reflection question. Are there areas of your life where you can improve your integrity? If so, what steps can you take to do so? So I'd love for everyone to take a journaling moment right now. I'll give you a couple minutes like I did earlier. And then you're welcome to join if you'd like, to share if you like. Um, or you can even just share what answering this question felt like for you. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to answer this question. All right, so if folks would like to share maybe a little bit about how answering this question felt, or maybe if you'd like to share your answer, that would be great. We have 3 minutes left, so this would be a nice way to kind of do a little bit of self-reflection. You can throw that in the chat box. Conversation truthfully. I love that journaling prompts are so helpful. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all about the journaling prompts. I love journaling. Such a simple practice with such huge, huge, huge results. Freeing. That's beautiful. I really feel like I need to journal more about it. Absolutely. Yeah, taking that time. Working on my people pleasing on various levels of my life, putting myself first doesn't come very naturally. Yep, I'm right there with you, Nicole. it doesn't come naturally to me either. Yeah. And it's hard when it doesn't come naturally, right? Yeah, I feel that. Could work on accepting with the proper energy, intimate partner's truth. Yeah, yeah. That's a big one. Taking my rest when overwhelmed by being in groups. Absolutely. And saying it truthfully that I need that time away. Yes. Beautiful. I have always thought a lot about integrity, and it is always refreshing when this topic is brought into all aspects of our humanity. Yes. Thank you for taking embedding integrity within in sexuality and sexual selves. Yes. Thank you, Paula. I appreciate that. I'm grateful that this was valuable for you. Okay, well, if anyone else is gonna want, like, you can just go ahead and throw it in. But that concludes my talk. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you got a lot from it. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is at I am Jocelyn Silva. My website is www.jocelynsilva.com. I also have a program on healing sexual shame that is open to all gender identities and sexual orientations. We're starting in June. So if that's something that you might be interested in joining, you can go on my Instagram, check out the information for that, ask me any questions. I also do one-on-one coaching if anyone's interested as well. All right, thank you.
Awesome, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I want to open up the floor to more questions, and you can go ahead and put those in the chat or put those in the Q&A. And there, I did record a question from earlier in the conversation. Roxana says, I find it interesting that the description you shared about orgasmic breathing instructs in the exact opposite way of my pelvic floor therapist. The therapist says we are meant to release with inhale because the pelvic floor is naturally expanding lower and tightened with exhale. Can you talk about why you would do the opposite for your breathing techniques?
Yes. So I find that doing it when you contract on the inhale and push out on the exhale is a lot more intuitive for individuals who have never done this type of breathing before. And usually when I do it with my clients to begin with, I start with that because a lot of them, like they say that it kind of feels like this, right? Like when they're doing the orgasmic breathing. So the contracting on the inhale and the releasing on the exhale just feels a lot easier for individuals that are beginning with orgasmic breathing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. And I hope that answers your question, Roxana.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to stop the share. And then that way. Okay, cool. My pleasure, Roxana. Thank you.
We have linked, or Jordan has linked the link to your package in the chat. So people are more than welcome to check that out. And you are getting so much love in the chat. So we will make sure that you get a copy of all of this. And also, it's, as an entrepreneur, it's good to actually get to gather that data points of like, what are people actually concerned about, and that fuels and feeds everybody, not just Jocelyn, obviously, but that fuel, this is the content that people want to know, that we are all kind of hungry for and thirsty for, and yeah, really juicy stuff. So
I think it's important to note that, like, the reason again why I'm so passionate about this is I know firsthand what being out of integrity, the harm, the pain, the suffering that it does in relationships. As someone who was not in her integrity for a really long time, you know, and again, I just feel like this topic is one that isn't spoken about enough. And once we accept that it's uncomfortable, then we'll be fine. But it's like understanding, right, that it's uncomfortable. So, but yeah, no, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm so happy that everyone got so much from it.
awesome. Just going through the chat again and looking for questions that I might have missed.
I have a
And
question, if I could
Mhm.
ask that while you were looking, Amanda.
sure.
Okay. So, Jocelyn, just this isn't part of the question, but as an aside, your slides were beautiful. I love that. I just want to compliment you on them.
Thank you.
Visually, it was just really beautiful to look at. So, thank you for taking that extra bit of care to make stunning slides. So, my question I have is you mentioned several times the importance of being able to sit in, let's see, my notes, to be able to sit in the discomfort of someone else's disappointment. What tips do you have that you've shared with your clients to help them be able to sit in the discomfort of other people's disappointment?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one, acknowledging that you're uncomfortable with someone else's disappointment, because something that a lot of my clients have expressed to me is that the moment they feel an ounce of disappointment with their partner, it's like they want to go into solution mode, right? Like, oh my God, how do I fix this? I fucked up. Like, how do I get a hold of this? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, just kidding, forget what I said, right? They want to go into like that mode, right? So one, it's just being like, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now. I'm really uncomfortable. I'm really sad that I've hurt. I feel bad, right? I feel guilty. So one, it's acknowledging, hello, guilt. There you are. How's it going? Discomfort, right? The second one is being able to express that, right? Being able to just be honest about it with our partners. Like, hey, I feel really uncomfortable right now. I feel really sad that what I said really hurt you. Owning up to that, right? Making yourself accountable. Like, I know that what I said was probably not easy to hear. And I just want you to know that like it wasn't easy for me to express that either, right? So having that little conversation with the partner can also do a lot for you. And the last one is what I've said already, journaling. Taking some time to sit down and write it out. Like, this really sucks. I hate how I feel. This is uncomfortable, right? I feel bad, blah, 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 blah. And just processing through that emotion on your own. And also understanding that you're doing right by yourself when you speak truth. So even if it's uncomfortable, reminding yourself, like, I'm putting myself first. This is what needed to be done. I know it wasn't fun, but I know that this will lead to a deeper intimacy in the end. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Sort of reminding them of the sweet aftertaste of that fruit.
Yes, yeah, the aftertaste. Feels so good to be in alignment with yourself.
Yes. Thank you for that answer. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm definitely taking away two things. One is just that it's sort of OG, the concept of like, say it out loud, repeat it 10 times. The more you say pussy, 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 the less power it has
Yeah.
over you. And it felt good to be reminded of just that simple exercise that as a coach, like I haven't needed to use that exercise. And so it's one of those tools that can get a little rusty when it isn't used in a long time. And it's cool to have it brought back up as a coaching skill, as the coaching skills coordinator. And then the other thing that I do love is journaling. And I think it is such a powerful thing to get your thoughts out. I personally am not a writer. I don't love my handwriting. It's very uncomfortable for me to write with a pen and paper, but I love voice notes. I love dictating so that my words are coming out and being printed in a way that I can see, but I don't have to be hindered by the slowness of my hand to get all of those thoughts out. And we were just talking in our boss session, outer game right before this, that there are times when it just sort of pours out of my mouth in a way that I have very little control over. But I think there's probably a lot of truth that comes out in that sort of word vomit, if you will, that if I had to sit and write out all of that, I would refrain from that journaling exercise. So I love just that twist on being able to express yourself in whatever way that you can record it, right?
Yeah.
So that you can kind of go back and look and see what were your thoughts in that moment.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually had a client, I have several clients who will tell me I don't like journaling. And I usually communicate with my clients through an app called Voxer, which is like a walkie-talkie app, so they can do voice notes as well. And so for one of my clients who was on this journey of accepting her sexuality, I had her voice note me every single day, I'm bisexual and I'm proud of myself. And she was like, this is so silly, right? She just thought, like, okay. Yeah, I was like, I want you to voice note me. Hi, Jocelyn, I'm bisexual and I'm happy about it, or I'm proud of myself, or I feel good about it, right? But after doing this for 1 week, I was like, okay, how do you feel? She's like, well, at first I felt silly. She's like, but after doing it a couple times, like I started to believe what I was saying, you know? And that's the power of, like you say, speaking it out loud, right? Is being able to feel. I did this interview for this podcast, and this woman said, tasting the language in our mouths. And I was like, ooh, I like how it sounded kind of sexy there.
Yeah, that is interesting. I love that too.
Yeah.
A question from Monica. How would we have access to the workbook? Good question. What I'm guessing we will do is send out an email. Alternatively, it may be connected to the webinar library. I'm not sure, but I think it usually comes out in an email.
Yeah, and I have a link to it that I can send you, Amanda, so you can send to everyone as well.
That would be great. Awesome. Paula says, I would love to know if you use other languages and other cultural knowledge to support clients with different backgrounds, especially Hispanic and Latinx communities. Thanks in advance.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Paula. So yeah, I'm actually bilingual. My first language is Spanish. And for the longest time, I've been wanting to do like workshops and programs in Spanish. I haven't realized it yet, but it is something that is very much in my heart to want to do, is to provide more services that are in Spanish. I got hit with like an inspiration recently to do like a free webinar in Spanish on this. But in regards to like language, like to support like other cultures, I think in general, one of the things that I enjoy about or in general, the way that I like to coach and educate, I like to use I like things that are tangible. I like being grounded. You feel me? Like I like being like, this is what it is, right? And so I try to be as like simple with my language, no matter who I'm speaking with, so that it can be understood among everyone, right? And that's always something that I think is important, because I think it's important that this information is accessible, right, to individuals. So instead of saying like, to be a sex goddess, right? You could be like, what do you like in bed? You know what I mean? It's just kind of like bringing it down to like a simple language. And I think I just do that across all of my coaching, because that's just the way that I enjoy showing up. Mhm.
Like I said, you're getting nothing but love in the chat. Let's stay open for another 2 minutes. And in the meantime, Jocelyn, do you have anything coming up that you want to plug? Maybe a podcast or something that you've done recently?
I have so much to plug. I'm so excited. Okay,
Go for
y'all.
it.
Are you
The
ready?
stage is yours. Go for it.
Okay, cool. So Shameless Desire starts in June. It's an 8-week group coaching program on healing sexual shame, and it's welcome to everyone. The 8 weeks is $400, and you also can do a payment plan of a 3-month payment plan. And I think that's in the chat, but that's on my website. It has been a game changer. Like this program has been so supportive to the first round. 13 women just went through it, and many of them have expressed like life-changing experiences. One of the women who's been married for 15 years said that she has initiated sex more in the last month of the program than she had in her entire marriage. So it's been a really beautiful game changer. So if that's something that interests you, please check it out. The next one is I'm doing a few events here in Los Angeles. On May 30th, I'm doing a workshop on oral sex for all, and that's going to be in Pasadena, California. On June, I believe, I don't know the dates yet, but I can send it. But in June, we're doing a couples workshop. My partner actually might be leading that workshop with me. I'm not sure yet, but he's also studying to be a sex coach. So that's going to happen also in Pasadena. And then in July, we're doing a self-love half-day retreat for women. So I can send all that information to Amanda and Jordan to kind of disperse to anyone who's interested. No, Dave, Shameless Desire is for men as well. It's for all gender identities, all sexual orientations. Anyone and everyone can join. And last one is that we're doing a live Yoni Gazing ceremony in LA on Sunday, June 23rd. So if you are a vulva owner and you would like to be in a space with other vulva owners looking at our vulvas through a mirror, live in person, this is a great opportunity to do so. This has like been my dream workshop and I'm really excited about it. So again, I can send you all that information. You can
I'm
disperse it.
curious where you got permission to do the Yoni Gazing workshop, because just as a matter of logistics, I'm curious how, as a sex coach, how do you go to a space and be like, this is what I'd like to do?
Yeah. So my partner is like a huge yogi, and his yoga studio, we're really close to the owner. And so, you know, she's been following me on Instagram, and I was kind of like, and she's also like a feminist and like very like pro women. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of thinking of doing this event. And she's like, yeah. So she rented the space out to me for 2 hours. So yoga studio. I think yoga studios are like the best way to go.
Yeah, agreed. I have a nude fitness and sex coaching program for women, and I'm sort of like, I'm going to end up at a yoga studio. I know, I just know.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we are going to wrap it up. And yeah, we got fried green tomatoes in action. Love that, Azure. Yeah. It's very, very Betty Dodson. I love that. So thank you so much, Jocelyn. And we will all follow you on your Insta. Make sure you go to Jocelyn's page, you give her a follow, a like, help promote each other so that we show up in the algorithms. Check out the link to her package and then look for an email coming from us. I hope I am not over promising here, Jordan. But look for an email with a bunch of these items. As far as her items coming up, Jocelyn, you're going to reach out to Lisa to set that up. Okay?
Cool. I'll send Lisa everything.
Awesome. And then everybody will get it that way.
Great.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, everybody who is here live and who is watching this virtually. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thank you for having me.
Be kind to yourself.